All right, so are you ready for a deep dive on this incredible 5-point scale? Let's just jump right in. We're going to be looking at Kari Dunn Buron's book, The Incredible 5-Point Scale. And I gotta say, that's a pretty bold title, right? Incredible.
Yeah.
But honestly, the more I kind of dug into it, I get why she calls it incredible. It's this like deceptively simple system for understanding and managing emotions and behaviors, and it's been a game changer,
Mm.
especially for folks on the autism spectrum. But you know what? I think anyone who struggles with emotional regulation could get something out of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's really cool about it is how visual it is. It takes
Well,
these big abstract feelings and it makes them something that you can actually see and work with.
okay, so break it down for me. We're talking a 1 to 5 scale, right?
Yeah.
But what makes that so different from just saying like, oh, I'm a little frustrated or I'm really frustrated?
It's all about customization. You're not just slapping a number on a feeling. You're creating a roadmap for each emotion. So like, let's say you're working with someone who has a hard time managing anger. The scale helps them break down anger into these smaller, more manageable steps so they can figure out where they're at and then what they need to do next.
So instead of just being like, I'm a 7 out of 10 angry elegy, you're actually defining what each level of anger looks like and feels like for you.
Exactly. And you're not doing this alone. It's a team effort. So you're working with the individual, maybe their family, their teachers, whoever's part of their support network, to figure out what each level means.
I'm already seeing how this could be so helpful. I mean, think about all the meltdowns that could be avoided if someone could just recognize, oh, I'm at a level 3. I need to use my strategies to calm down before I hit level 5 and just explode.
Exactly. And that's what I think is so key here. It gives people a sense of control. It's not about suppressing emotions. It's about understanding them and managing them.
Okay, so walk me through an example. Let's stick with anger. How would this scale actually look in practice?
Okay, so you'd start with a level 1. That might be like totally chill,
Yeah.
you know, no tension, no worries. And then you move up to a level 2. Maybe for this person that's starting to feel irritated, like their jaw is clenching, they get a little quiet. Level 3 could be like their voice is getting louder, maybe they're pacing a little bit. And so on up to a level 5, which might be like yelling or even throwing things.
So you're literally like painting a picture of what each stage looks like. But it's not just about recognizing the stages, right? It's about what you do with that information.
Right. And that's where I think the incredible part kicks in.
Mhm.
Once you have those levels defined, you work together to come up with strategies.
So if I can see myself creeping up to like a level 2 anger, what can I do about it?
And that's where you get creative. Maybe for level 2, it means taking some deep breaths. For level 3, it might be removing yourself from the situation. The book gives this really cool example of a kid who loved video games. And so they related the scale to the levels in their favorite video game. And it just clicked.
I love that. So you're not just making it visual, you're tapping into something that the person already understands and enjoys.
Totally.
That's brilliant.
And it works. When we understand where we're at emotionally
Mhm.
and we have the tools to manage it, we feel more in control. We're less overwhelmed.
Okay, so we've got our scale. We've brainstormed some strategies. Now, how do we make this part of everyday life? Do I have to like carry around a little anger thermometer or something?
But the book really emphasizes these visual aids,
Yeah.
charts, pictures, even the little cards that you can carry.
So I can look at it and be like, okay, I'm at a level 3 time to use my level 3 strategy.
Yep. There's a part in the book where a teacher had a 5-point scale chart up in her classroom. And the kids could literally point to where they were on the scale.
Hold on, so they were actually using this during the school day.
Yeah. And it wasn't just for anger. They had scales for focus, anxiety, excitement, all sorts of things. The teacher even said it helped her manage her own emotions in the classroom.
That's wild. It's like teaching emotional intelligence in a really concrete way. Okay, so we're starting to see how this works for individuals. But what about like a whole family or a classroom? How do you get everyone on board losing this consistently?
Yeah. That's where the teamwork is so important. The book really stresses that everyone who's supporting the person using the scale needs to be on the same page. So parents, teachers, therapists, siblings, everyone needs to understand how it works and how to use it in a positive way.
Okay, that makes sense. But in reality, getting everyone to understand and use a new system consistently, especially when we're talking about emotions, it can be tricky. So how do you actually pull that off?
Well, the book has some really practical advice. It talks about clear communication and consistent training. So think like family meetings, workshops for teachers, even just quick check-ins between parents and caregivers. The goal is to create a shared language around emotions. So instead of just saying, oh, he's having a meltdown, you can say, he's at a 4 on his anger scale.
Yeah.
And we need to use his level 4 strategies.
So it becomes less about reacting to the outburst and more about proactively supporting the person before things escalate.
Exactly.
That's huge.
And there's some great stories in the book about how this works in real life. There's one about a boy who used the scale to manage his anxiety at school. And at first, only his teacher was using it. But then the school counselor got involved and they started teaching his classmates about the scale too. And the kids actually came up with some of their own strategies to help him when he was feeling anxious,
Hmm.
like offering to read a story with him or giving him some space.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So the 5-point scale wasn't just a tool for him, it was a way for the whole classroom to be more understanding and supportive. It feels like it goes way beyond just managing behavior. It's about building empathy and emotional intelligence in everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It changes the focus from blaming or punishing to understanding and collaborating. And the book makes a really strong case that this is key to making the scale work in the long run.
So consistency and teamwork are crucial. But what about measuring progress? How do we know if it's actually working? Are we talking like charts and graphs and data points here?
Well, data is helpful, but it's not just about numbers. The book talks a lot about qualitative data too. Observation is really important. So parents, teachers, therapists can all make notes about how often the person's using the scale, how well they're using their strategies, and whether they seem to be getting better at managing their emotions overall.
So it's about noticing those little things. Like, are they recognizing their triggers sooner? Are they using their coping skills more on their own?
Exactly. And the person's own thoughts are important too. How do they feel like they're doing? Are they finding the scale helpful?
This is all starting to sound very personalized and tailored, which makes sense because everybody's emotional landscape is different. But what happens when the scale stops being effective or the person's needs change? I mean, people grow and evolve. Their emotional triggers and coping mechanisms probably change too, right?
You're absolutely right. And that's why the book is so big on flexibility and adaptation.
Mhm.
The 5-point scale isn't meant to be a one-time fix. It needs to evolve with the person.
So how do you go about adjusting it? Do you just scrap the whole thing and start over?
Not necessarily. It's often about making small tweaks. Maybe the descriptions for each level need to be updated, or the strategies aren't working as well anymore, or maybe the person has learned some new coping skills that they want to add in.
So you're constantly evaluating and making sure it stays relevant and useful?
Exactly. The book has an example of a teenage girl who was using the scale to manage her anger. And it was working well for a while, but then she started having more outbursts. And when her therapist looked into it, it turned out that her triggers had changed. It wasn't just about school or family stuff anymore. Now, social media and peer pressure were playing a bigger role.
That makes sense. I can see how those life transitions and new experiences can totally change how we react emotionally. So did they adjust her scale to match these new triggers?
They did. They worked together to figure out what her new triggers were, and they adjusted the descriptions for each level on her scale and came up with some new strategies that fit her current situation. The book really emphasizes that this process of revisiting and adapting the scale is super important for making it work long term.
That's so insightful. It's not just about setting it and forgetting it. It's about constantly working together and making sure the scale is always something that empowers the person. This deep dive has been incredibly eye-opening. I'm already thinking about how I can use some of these ideas in my own life. But before we wrap up, I'm curious what you found most impactful or surprising about this book. What's your biggest takeaway?
For me, I went into it thinking it was going to be this very specific tool for a very specific group of people. And while it is so valuable for people on the spectrum, what really got me was how much broader it could be, the potential of the 5-point scale. Like it's this framework you could use for any challenging behavior, even
Yeah.
for yourself.
Oh, that's interesting. So you're seeing applications way beyond just emotional regulation.
Totally. Think about it. We all have those things we struggle with, right?
Mm.
Procrastination, overeating,
Yeah.
spending way too much time scrolling on social media. You could adapt the 5-point scale to work on any of those.
Okay, I'm starting to see where you're going with this, but can you give me an example? How would you use it for something like procrastination?
Well, you start the same way as with any emotion. Define what each level of procrastination looks like for you. So maybe level 1 is, I'm feeling super productive, I'm tackling my to-do list. And then level 2 is like, I'm starting to get a little overwhelmed. Maybe I'll just check my email real quick. You know how it
Oh,
goes.
yeah, believe me, I know. And then 2 hours later, you've got nothing done. So how does the scale help you break that cycle?
Once you've got those levels figured out, you can brainstorm strategies for each one. So maybe at level 2, your strategy is, okay, I'm going to set a timer for 15 minutes of focused work. Then I can take a 5-minute break. And at level 3, it might be like, all right, got to get rid of all these distractions. Phone goes in the other room.
So it's about catching those warning signs early and having a plan to get back on track. I love that. But I do have a question. We've been talking about all the positives of the 5-point scale. Are there any downsides? Things people should watch out for?
That's a really good question. And the book does mention a few potential pitfalls. One thing is making sure the scale isn't being used as punishment. It shouldn't be about making someone feel bad for being at a higher level. It's about giving them support and helping them learn to manage their emotions.
So focusing on their experience and making sure they feel empowered, not judged.
Exactly. The book also talks about not oversimplifying things. Emotions are complicated risks, and sometimes reducing them to a number on a scale can feel a little too simplistic.
Right. It's a tool, not a magic wand.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that everybody's different. What works for one person might not work for someone else. So being flexible and working together are really key.
This has been such a great deep dive. We've gone from the basics of the 5-point scale to all these different ways to use it, and even some things to be careful about. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we wrap up?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the 5-point scale is more than just a way to manage emotions. It's a way to understand behavior, to come up with personalized strategies, and to build empathy and collaboration. And the best part is, it's something that can help everyone, no matter what challenges they're facing.
That's such a great point. It's about feeling empowered, being more self-aware, and building stronger connections with ourselves and the people around us. Well, I think we've officially unpacked the incredible 5-point scale. Huge thanks to Kari Dunn Buron for writing such a practical and helpful book. And to everyone listening, we hope this deep dive has given you some new ideas and inspired you to explore the power of this simple but amazing tool. Until next time, keep learning and keep diving deep.
Honestly, I went into this thinking it was like just for a very specific group of people. And it is so valuable for folks on the spectrum. But the thing that really surprised me is how much broader it could be. Like the 5-point scale is really this framework you could use for any behavior that's challenging, even stuff you're struggling with.
Huh. That's interesting. So you're seeing applications way beyond just like those big emotions.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we all have those things we struggle with. Procrastination,
Mm.
overeating, getting sucked into social media for hours. You could adapt the 5-point scale to work on any of those.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. But give me an example. Like, how would you use it for procrastination, let's say?
Well, you'd start the same way as with any emotion. Define what each level looks like for you. So like level 1 could be, okay, I'm feeling really productive, knocking things off my list. And then level 2 is like, oh, I'm starting to feel a little overwhelmed. Maybe I'll just check my email real quick. You know how it goes.
Oh, yeah, I know exactly. Next thing you know, it's 2 hours later and you've gotten nothing done. So how does the scale actually help you break that cycle?
Once you've got those levels figured out, you can brainstorm strategies. So for level 2, maybe your strategy is, all right, I'm setting a timer, 15 minutes focused work, and then I get a 5-minute break.
Yeah.
At level 3, it might be, oh, you got to remove those distractions. Phone goes in the other room.
So it's like you're catching those warning signs early and you have a plan to redirect yourself. I love that. But I do have a question. We've been talking about all the positives of the 5-point scale. Are there any downsides, like things people should watch out for?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the book does mention a few potential pitfalls.
Mm-hmm.
One is making sure it's not being used as punishment. So it shouldn't be about making someone feel bad for being at a higher level. It's about support and helping them learn to manage their emotions.
So focusing on their experience and making sure they feel empowered, not judged.
Right. And the book also talks about not oversimplifying. Emotions are complex. And sometimes just reducing them to a number can feel a little too simple.
Right. It's a tool, not a magic solution.
Exactly. And I think it's important to remember everyone's different too. What works for one person might not work for another. So that flexibility and working together are really key.
This has been such a great deep dive. We've covered so much, the basics of the 5-point scale, all the different ways it can be used, even some things to be careful about. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we wrap things up?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that the 5-point scale is more than just about managing those big emotions. It's really a way to understand behavior, come up with strategies, and build that empathy and collaboration. And the best part, it can help anyone no matter what they're going through.
That's such a great point. It's about feeling empowered, being self-aware, and building those stronger connections with ourselves and with the people around us. Well, I think we have officially unpacked the incredible 5-point scale. Big thanks to Kari Dunn Buron for writing such a practical and insightful book. And to all of you listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it sparked some ideas and inspired you to explore this incredible tool. Until next time, keep learning and keep diving deep.